Vince, it's awesome to see you. I should have hit record when I asked you this question first. How was the Rose Bowl?
It was an experience that I've wanted to be a part of. As a sports photographer for so many years, that's one game that I never got to go out and cover. And being a Steelers fan, one of my first sports memories was watching them beat the Rams in the Super Bowl in the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
And it was beautiful. It's the beautiful light, the great colors, the mountains. So all these years, 160 stadiums or so, never did the Rose Bowl. And the crazy story is my brother passed away about 2 months ago. And on December 30th, not to go too deep into it, I messaged a friend out of the blue just to check in. And he's like, so sorry about your brother, but the stories you wrote about him were really inspiring, so much so that my dad always wanted to go to the Rose Bowl. And so he went and bought tickets for him and his dad, flights from Denver to LA, and tickets to the game because they were going because of the story with my brother. I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. And then within a half an hour, I talked to my wife and I was like, I've always wanted to go. I haven't gone. And she could tell by the look in my eyes that I was like thinking about it. Within a half an hour, I bought a flight and then I bought my ticket to the airport and I flew out on January 1st at 7 a.m. Got there, friend Jeff Barnes drove me over to the Rose Bowl, watched the game. Amazing experience, the colors, the light, the whole atmosphere, and then got back out of red eye back to Florida that night. And, I'm still tired.
So tell me about the experience, like share the experience. What's the experience of making a decision, jumping on an airplane, going out and meeting up with a friend like Jeff, getting a ride, like just describe the experience and compare it to what you thought it might.
Oh, there wasn't any time to think. So the funny thing is we had looked about 3 months ago going. I thought about taking my family out. Like I always want to go to the Rose Bowl. And it turned out that my kids who are right now, they're overnight airsoft competition. So
Okay.
they go out with the guns and so they're doing it today and overnight tomorrow. So we couldn't do it because they already had that booked. So I was like, maybe next year, but they're doing renovations to the Rose Bowl. So I'm like, I want to get there soon. So when it all happened, 2 days before, a day and a half beforehand, it was so fast that I was like, okay, so the experience was a blur in getting there, but it felt just so life-giving, so alive to just do it so quickly, spend the money, do the trip, and then kind of eliminate all the excuses that we constantly always have. Why I can't do this. It can't, it's not practical. It's not reasonable. Watching, my brother, 54 years old, I'm 53, just passed away overnight, just passed away in his sleep. Changes your mindset a little bit, like live your life. And he always did. My brother always did. He did not leave this world with a lack of experiences. He lived 2 lives in one. And it's very inspiring to be like, let's do these things. Let's just go and it inspires you to do the work to make it happen. Like the whole thing, I'm still coming down from it because to be able to sit in that stadium, I know it's just a game, but to be able to be in that experience that I've watched, that's the one college game that I'll watch every year. I don't really care about college football, but the Rose Bowl at 5:30 Eastern every year and the lights and the colors, I love it. So to be there was really, really such a cool experience.
So talk about living life, no regrets, finding experiences, getting out there and doing this. What are some of the things that in the past have gotten in the way of you doing?
Well, I'm kind of an odd person. I've lived my life I don't have a whole lot of experience of things getting in my way. Like I'm going to do it. And I'm not I'm financially conservative. I'm good with our money. I'm always, I watched my dad go broke at 16. So, and not from any fault of his own. He was in a partnership. Well, I'm not a fan of partnerships, and had a great business. And overnight, his partner emptied the bank accounts and left town. So 1985, $134,000 was a lot of money. Still a lot of money now, but 1985, to have somebody take all the money and leave, I watched that. So I've always been, hey, we got to have our money together, right? We've got to that was to watch my dad for 6 months lay on the couch in depression, trying to figure it out, almost losing the house. I thought my parents were getting divorced, the whole thing, but everything was falling apart. So I've always been financially conservative and investing and all that type of stuff and making sure that, but I've always been an experienced guy. We drive 2 old cars. I don't care about cars. but I want to be able to hop on a plane to the Rose Bowl or take my kids on wherever, whenever I want. So I've not, since I was 20 years old, that's not gotten in my way as my brother. But I think I do it in a lot of ways to honestly, to inspire other people. The only reason why I post about it on social, which I know we're going to talk about today, is really not, it's not a chest bumping thing. It is, I want other people to go do it, to take that experience, to take the chance. Because I can tell you at his funeral, that's all we talked. We talked about experience. We didn't talk about wealth. We didn't talk about houses or cars. We talked about experiences and memories and relationships. And so it's been very easy for me in my life to do that. And I think I just found it's harder for other people to pull that trigger that often.
Why do you say it's either odd? Because that's one of the words you used. It's you referred to yourself as odd.
Yeah.
Why do you think you're odd? And then let's get into the hard piece. And yep, we'll get into the social stuff a little bit later. But so let's talk about odd first, and then hard.
Yeah. I guess because everybody's always told me that I'm odd. I guess that's where it comes from. I've always been the weird one, or the one that kind of thinks differently, or will do things that everybody's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, and my experience goes back even further. So I ran in high school with a kind of a rougher crowd, right? We weren't very good in school. We took chances then. We were, somewhat dangerous in a lot of different ways. A lot of the people that I hung out with in the alcove, which is the place at our high school where all the derelict hung out, like a lot of them didn't make it. Like when I was 30 years old, many of them were dead or in jail by the time I turned 30. So when I was 20, when I was a teenager, I truly didn't think I was going to live to 20. Like I believed that. I'm like, something's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong. There's too many things that I've already gotten away with. So Mike, on my 20th birthday, I had a girl that I was dating. I visited her at the hospital. She had a gallbladder. Something was going on. She had appendectomy. I'm not sure what exactly it was. I was visiting her there, and I was driving home that night on my birthday, and I was like, oh my God, I made it to 20. And that was the first time I thought about it. And I remember saying, I wasn't even supposed to be here. In my mind, I wasn't supposed to be here. And I said to myself, it's all bonus from now. I wasn't supposed to be here. That moment, 33 years ago, was life-changing for me, because it was like, I want to become a professional photographer. Why not? I'm not supposed to be here anyway. It's all bonus. So I did it. When a lot of my friends were like, I don't know, it's not a very safe career. I don't want to spend the money for the cameras. I got to get a safe job. I didn't worry about any of that stuff. I said, I'm going to go do it. And I put my effort into it, and I did it. And for 22 years, I was a, professional sports photographer traveling the country. So that one moment, anytime I start getting stressed, I'm like, it's all bonus anyway. And I'm so glad for that moment, because I think it's got me to do things that other people said, you're crazy. And then it kind of sometimes inspires them to do it as well.
I think one of the things that's important about what Vince just shared is having something that you can go back to, something that you can reflect on to help keep you moving forward in whatever the thing is. When things get hard, when things get tough, when life comes at you, or you have that reminder, and the reminder could be, hey, I shouldn't even be here, or I didn't think I was going to be here, or whatever it is, but have that reminder, that kind of trigger that gets you grounded. And sometimes it can be a token. It can be a piece of something. And you can be, a reminder can be your wedding ring. A reminder there are a number of different things that can be it. Have that reminder, because your mind and your body will get you into those situations where they will tell you things like, hey, you're not worthy, or it's too hard, or that's going to be too expensive, or what if it doesn't work out, and not even that. I think the questions are more important. The what if type question can really lead to some really interesting things. So let's talk about the hard part about making decisions, deciding to just go in and do things and gain those experiences, rather than taking the easy route, or the simple route, which is just kind of staying in the flow and just keep going whatever direction, kind of coasting. Why do people avoid hard things?
I think they're unsure. I think they're unsure of making a mistake. That's what I think. A lot of people are so afraid of making a mistake. And when you make so many mistakes in your life, and you realize, which I have done, and you realize I've learned, it's like an old cheesy song. I've learned more from my mistakes than anything that went well. Like, how do you grow? You grow from, the funny story I told it, with my brother was, one time when I was younger, he set me up on a date, and I didn't know anything about dating. And I didn't, it's not like me and my dad talked about it. It was not your, typical, father knows best, just typical scenario. My dad was going through a whole lot of stuff when I started getting into that space. We weren't very close. And so my brother, and his girlfriend set me up on a date, and I dropped this girl off, and I didn't think about it. And I dropped her off and I drove away. And the next morning, my brother calls me. He's like, "Are you an idiot?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You didn't wait till she got into the house. You didn't walk her to the door." I'm like, "Steve, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. I had no idea." Well, guess what? That's how I learn. I learn from mistakes. I think so often when people are like starting a business and they go, "But what if it fails? I tried one and it failed already." I'll say, like, "You married?" And like, "Yeah." Like, did the first time you went out with somebody, was it the perfect situation? Like, did you never fail before? Like, no, you only know who you want to marry by knowing who you don't want to marry, by dating them or by making those mistakes. So I've never been afraid of mistakes. I've never been afraid of it. I say it all the time, bad choices make great stories. My best content is stories of mine from bad choices that I made. And you learn from them. As long as they're not fatal, you're gonna learn a lot from it. So that's always been my perspective on it. And I think a lot of people, from my experience and my work, are afraid of not being perfect and not having it all lined up before they do it. And what I joke all the time is like, are you planning to live to your 800 years old? Like, you don't have that much time. Like, you got to do these things. And yeah, so that's an approach that I take.
So let's honor your brother a little bit here. Let's talk, share a couple of different stories. Give me 3 memories of your brother that either relate to working through hard things, creating amazing experiences, or something else. Let's go.
Yeah.
Story number 1.
Story number 1 is his career. He was an electrician on Long Island. He was an electrician, and in late 90s, it wasn't a glamorous job. He was in attics of houses in Limbrook, sweating, his butt off and wiring up houses. And it wasn't a very, glamorous or well-paying thing. Got paid pretty well, but there was an opportunity to go into New York City and go to the Union Hall and see if he can get work on Manhattan on Broadway shows. Nothing guaranteed, very few connections, but he knew enough to go to the Union. They take the train in, hour-long train in the morning, and you sit in this Union Hall and you hope to get called. And he did that for a couple months and didn't get called. So he gave up income. He gave up a steady career to go in because this is what he really wanted to do. He was a very hard worker, very smart. That's what always pissed me off growing up is he was always so smart, and I was kind of the screw off that was like, why can't you be more like your brother? Because he would just figure things out. I didn't. As my dad said to me when I was 13, I'm not mechanically inclined. My brother was mechanically inclined. I wasn't. He was able to do these things. And eventually he got his first call at the Union Hall, and he did great and called back again. And next thing I know, he's like, come on in. And I take the train to the city, and I'm at the Ed Sullivan Theater, and he's working on the Letterman show. And I'm sitting in the audience 3 hours before a show, and Letterman's throwing a football around with the stagehands, and he's wiring up the theater. I'm like, he did it. He did that until the day he died. He was working on, on The Grinch, on Jersey Boys, on Spider-Man. He worked on all the shows. So that was something where he could have kept it really safe and comfortable with the steady job on Long Island, or he wanted something more, and he was willing to really go through the pain to get it. So that really impacted me even in my photography career. Like, oh, I can make this happen if I work for it. That was impactful.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
You said Lynbrook, so I got one of my favorite scenes in Everybody Loves Raymond is when Ray's mom says that she's going to be the whore of Lynbrook, and the grandpa says we can move from Lynbrook. So anyway,
such a good show.
So how about another story? Either maybe a story of like failure. So you hit on the failure of the couple of months of doing it and going through this, and then staying with the grind, and then having things work out and being able to push through. What's another story that you can share about experience with your brother, either where you had to share failure with him and he helped you get through something, or whatever? Like, let's do one more story about your brother just to share some perspective from him.
Well, first of all, thank you for honoring him and having this
Yeah.
conversation, because I appreciate this, because, I've heard the line that a person never dies until you stop saying their name.
Yeah.
And that's my obligation to do that. That's right off the top of my head. It's not going to be right in line with what you just said, because
Sure.
if we talked in an hour, I'd have 3 of them, right? Because it's not. But I can tell you. I'll tell you the last story, because what you and I have talked about sports, and I'm a big Mets fan. My brother's a Mets fan, and we grew up going to games together. And then the Mets made the National League Championship Series in October, a couple months ago. And I called him up and I was like, hey, if I fly in, you want to go to a game? And he's like, of course, let me know, blah, blah, blah. So me and Dylan flew in, got tickets, and flew into New York, and we went to the game. We had, and Dylan didn't want to go, which was, he always wants to go. So it was really ironic that he didn't want to go. So it was just me and Steve, just like old times, taking the train into Citi Field, going to the game, having a blast. We didn't even argue. And me and my brother argued every time we saw each other. Didn't even argue. Had an amazing time. And at the end, and the Mets got blown out by the Dodgers. It was 10-2. 10-2 they lost. And we get on the train coming home. It's like midnight. And my brother gets on his phone to message his girlfriend, Tomka. And I still have this video. And she sent it to me. And he said, hey, it's me. And he said, we lost, 10-2, got blown out. He goes, but I'm happy. We had a great time. I'm happy. And he goes, spent $300 for a ticket. We lost. I should be unhappy, and I'm smiling in the back. He's like, but I'm happy. We had a great time. And that's the last video I have. And that was him. What always I admired of him in the past and drove me crazy as well was I was the emotional one. I was the one that get wound up. And he was always even keeled to the point, and it drove me crazy, because I'm like, I want to get a rise out of him and he'd be even keeled. But that video was true. No matter what was going on, he was happy. And I think it showed in his life. And I think it showed in other people, like, hey, he didn't get too high or low with things. He just enjoyed his life. And I keep playing that video because I'm like, what went wrong? We spent a lot of money, right, to go. The game wasn't great. We had a great time. And like, I think there's a mindset there that I hope that can carry on.
Oh, one more question about Steve.
Yeah.
What you guys usually argue about?
What didn't we argue about? Everything. We had we couldn't be more different in so many ways. Like, I'm married with 3 kids, and self-employed. He's single, no kids, union job, right across the board, right? Politically, we couldn't be more different. Oh, those were some fun conversations, especially around election time. Couldn't be more different. I mean, in so many ways, like, we didn't agree on almost everything. And that's what was kind of fun about it, because it was always a debate. We have videos of it. Like, we made a YouTube channel for him, and one of the videos is our last argument, because we were at my parents' house and we're arguing about, I can't remember what it was. I'll tell you what it was. My friend gave me a baseball that's a bottle opener with a Mets logo on it. And I opened it during the playoffs. I opened a beer, and Mets scored like 5 runs, and then they won the game. So I did that. And every time I opened it, the Mets won. And our last argument was like me really trying to convince him that this was a magic bottle opener, which obviously wasn't. But of course, I'm gonna fight. And we're going back and forth about this. It was the funniest argument, but it was literally the last one, and he was videotaping it. And then finally at the end, he goes, he's using my bad memory against me, because I was like pointing out all these things. We would argue, Mike, about everything. And that's what was fun about it.
Also, I absolutely believe in magic bottle openers. In fact, at about the 8-minute mark of the game on Wednesday, where in ASU and Texas were playing, I completely changed my clothes, because I was like, something's got to change. Like, we got to. I did my part. I changed my clothes, and ASU made it a bit more competitive.
Okay, one more to that point, and drives my wife crazy. 1986. One more Mets story. The Mets are in the playoffs. It's the only World Series they've won in my lifetime. And they're in the National League Championship Series. They can win the National League Championship Series and go to the World Series for the first time since I've been alive. They're in the 14th inning. They're up a run, and it's like a day game. So everybody's getting home from school. I'm sitting there, and everybody's going to laugh at me about this, and my wife laughs. I was laying with my feet up on the television stand and a broom across my stomach, balanced, because that's the way I was laying when they scored 3 runs in the 9th and tied it. So I didn't move for 5 innings. Mets score, take the lead. I'm about to win with the broom in the right spot. My brother comes home from school. Billy Hatcher's at the plate. I still remember it. The pitch comes, he goes to swing, and my brother turns the television off. And I jump up and I throw it. I'm like, what are you doing? And I turn the TV back on. And when I turned it back on, Billy Hatcher's rounding the bases with a home run and tied the game. And I was so mad at him. Put the broom back on, told him to go away. Mets scored 2 runs in the 16th and won it. Went to the World Series and wound up winning the only World Series that they've won in my lifetime. So he almost ruined it.
Almost ruined it. I remember I still lived. I lived in New Jersey when that series was going on. We moved from Long Island to New Jersey in '86, and I still remember watching. I don't remember the National League or the pennant series. I'm not a big baseball fan. Like I collect baseball hats. Like I've been a Padres fan, a Yankees fan, a Mets fan. Like everybody would just say, this is absolutely ridiculous. I can tell you this: when it comes to hockey, I'm an Islander fan. You will never see me wearing the colors of that other team. I've
got a Rangers jersey for you anytime you want.
Absolutely not. Like so. Those two things don't mix. The Islanders and the Rangers don't mix with each other. But on the baseball side, you just kind of collect things over. But I remember how amazing that series against Boston was too. Because I mean, this is back when you've got like Lenny Dykstra and Darryl Strawberry and Gary Carter and like it was absolutely awesome.
Hernandez. Yeah.
So all right,
they were the most fun team. They were the most fun team I've ever seen.
Well, and that's the when you start to see, I think this thing about momentum is really, really cool. And you see it happen in teams. It happened with ASU this year. ASU was picked to be last in the Big 12. Last in the Big 12. They dealt with a number of issues over the last couple of years. A coach that I was really excited about because he coached the Jets and he played to win the game, and Herm Edwards, and he's going to rebuild what's going on at ASU. And he ultimately, that failed. Then you bring a kid in. I mean, Kenny Dillingham was 34 years old when he took over the program. You bring a kid in who brings the competitive juice to the team, completely shifts and changes the culture, has the team playing at a level that teams can play at when they come together. And you see this momentum happen. And the momentum shift started to happen toward the end of the season where they started going on a run and they looked like one of the hottest teams in college football. Scottaboo is running over people. Quarterback's making good decisions. Defense is playing aggressive. And then the Big 12 or the Peach Bowl starts and things just kind of fizzle. And you're like, oh no, what's happening? And then you see that momentum build up again. And there's an excitement around this team that the last time I went to a Rose Bowl or sat in a Rose Bowl when the Rose Bowl was going on was back in '97 when ASU played Ohio State. And I was in the end zone where Plummer makes the run and scores the touchdown to go up with just a little bit of time left. And then you watch ASU go into prevent defense and prevent winning, and we lose to Ohio State. And I hate that team. That's another one of those teams. So there are a couple of teams that I despise. Anybody from Boston, Ohio State, all these, but there's something about momentum and how once you start creating movement, then that movement can build. And then that momentum starts to build. And then it becomes a movement. And then it becomes something that is unstoppable. So let's pull that back into social in a conversation that you and I had the other day around why I stay away from Facebook and why you are leaning into it. Because you're like, hey, Zuck, you win. Enough of going after all these other different platforms and trying to figure out how do I go to the thing that's trying to attract that audience. Let's just go where the audience is. So let's talk about social media and what have you learned over the past couple of years when it comes to your engagement in Facebook?
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation because it's discussed with so many people in our space, and the amount of people that can't stand it, or entrepreneurs that tell me, I get it if you're not an entrepreneur. Like, I want to be off of it. Totally get it. There's days that I want to be completely off of it too. I just think people are doing it all wrong. And that's what you and I were talking about. And this is the premise that I say, and I even wrote it in my upcoming book, is like, when I started in business in 2005, if somebody said there's going to be an app, I'd be like, what's an app? What is at that point? There's going to be something where you can log into it. You stay logged into it. You can create content on there. You can do videos. You can talk about your business. You can talk about your life. You can connect with anybody. I mean, literally almost anybody where you could be connected to. They could even see the stuff that you're posting. It could be billions of people potentially can see your stuff. People can comment on it. You can comment back. You can send them a private message. I would be sitting here right now and my mind would be blown. Like, what? I'm looking at the yellow pages in 2005. You're telling me about this thing that's going to connect everybody, and you can promote all the stuff. You can put links to stuff that people can buy you can build a personal brand around. Oh, the downside is, there's going to be a lot of knuckleheads on there. There's going to be a lot of people talking about stupid stuff. There's going to be political drama. There's going to be useless posts about cats and squirrels and whatever it is, and goofy stuff. And the algorithm's going to be a little wonky. Yeah, every once in a while you might get booted off unfairly. Yeah, but this thing's available for you. Mike, $2,000 or $3,000 a month, I would have paid for it. I'd pay for it. Like, this thing, I don't have to spend money on paid advertising. Or that's the other thing. You can do paid advertising through it too if you want to. I don't have to do print ads. I don't have to do all the other stuff that made business so difficult in 2005 to do. It's all going to be right there. It's going to be one app on your phone, and you can choose to engage. You can choose to not engage. You could be on it for an hour and shut it down and not get obsessed with it. You can control it your way. I would have paid. It would have been the number one expense that I paid for to have that opportunity. And almost everybody talks to go, I hate it. I'm getting off of it. But they're struggling to build their brand, and they're struggling to build their business, and they're not building a network, and they're not building connections. Nobody knows what they do. I'm like, I find it bizarre how many people, that's what I was saying to you. When people tell me I'm getting off of it, I hate it. Like, there's so many things to discuss about it, but like, change your algorithm, block people, create content that's valuable that you'd want to see. There's so many things you can do. It's I think incredibly valuable. Don't say this out loud, maybe block this part from the podcast, but I would pay big money for access to that free app. I really would, because the potential of what we do with it. But I think, and we can get into it, but I think everybody's underutilizing and undervaluing what you can do with it. 100%.
So one of the commitments I made to you when we talked about it is, hey, I'm going to test. And what's also is, so I've tested a couple of different ways where I'm putting more things out there. What was awesome about it is, I got a screenshot of one of my videos on some other channel where it was somebody stole your video and pushed it out there. I'm like, epic. I'm like, hey, I've arrived. Okay. So there are, let's talk about I can share why I don't use Facebook.
Yeah.
And why I'm interested in doing more there, again, to test some things. I've got this preconceived notion, which from a guiding principle perspective, I will say, don't limit yourself based on preconceived notions. So this is why how I'm going to work through breaking through it. But I've got this preconceived notion of the only people you connect with on Facebook are your friends. That's it.
Okay.
People, friends and family, and it's all that kind of stuff. Cause it's personal. It's all of that kind of stuff. And you only connect with your friends. So now I'm starting to get requests from people who I don't know, who are saying, friend requests. And there's a gap that I've got to get over to say, hey, does it make sense to connect with people in that way, which is different than following people or different than paying attention and all of that kind of stuff. So one of them is this whole kind of disconnection of what my preconceived notion is of Facebook, which is, hey, you know what? I've got 200 people that I'm connected with. I can tell you who every one of those people are. In a lot of cases, I can pick up my cell phone and make a call and send them a text and do those kind of things. So how do you break through that challenge of Facebook is this thing, it's a container of X versus
it's unlimited.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never viewed it that way. Right.
Okay,
It's cool. It's all our own personal.
Yeah.
Everything is all our personal take on it. Yeah. Right. Uh-huh. It's funny because I had somebody reach out to me. We were talking about this at a conference that I was speaking at, and she was like, oh, I know I need to do it, but like, the same exact thing. She said, I don't really want to post about this stuff because, my friends from, and she mentioned her friend from 4th grade doesn't want to see that. And I said, you're really going to let your friend from 4th grade you haven't talked to in how many years determine how you're going to build your business? And like, whoever said was that Facebook was just for friends and family? Like, who convinced us that that's the way that it was? Because within that same app is the leading person in your industry, and the 3,000 people below that are all connected. Like, whoever said it's just for friends and family? Like, I'm not arguing you. I'm just saying to the point, like, when was that ever determined that this is just for friends and family and I shouldn't be doing this other stuff? That's my first question, because I've never saw it that way. Like, I can call my mom, but I can't connect with these other people this way. Like, why would I limit it to that? That's my first perception of it.
It's a very cool perspective, and it's a shift in mindset for me. So like one of the other things that I'm looking at is, fuck, I've not done shit on Facebook anyway, other than what has happened just recently. And when I say recently, over the course of the last year and change, because I've got a community group that Jen and I are leading, where the origination of that group was on Facebook, and it started as The Perch, which is Dan Cockrell's group, and then Jody led it as the Phoenix Club, and then we took it over as the Phoenix Club back in December of 2023.
Yep.
And have now shifted it to the Leader Lab. And we still have a presence on Facebook, but we're getting away from it. And the reason we're getting away from it is to limit the amount of noise that exists out there. Because once people come in, if you've got to go there to go see the content, then there's the risk of all of the other distraction, where inside Slack, as an example, whether this is good or bad, inside Slack, the only thing is the stuff that you're coming in there for. So it's not this other potential distraction. Now, I get the whole idea of control the controllables. You can choose how you want to engage. You can choose how you back out. You can choose what you block. You can choose all of those kind of things. There's this, so given that I've not really done anything on Facebook over the years, there's no fucking reason why not to just go out there and do whatever the fuck it is that I want to do. And I know now I've turned this into an explicit discussion 32 minutes into the conversation, but so that's one of the things that's going through my head is, okay, well, you know what, if I'm going to go fuck around and find out, I'm going to go fuck around and find out and start to do some different things out there. When you hear me say that, that's completely different than what we talked about.
It's a double-edged sword for the way, think of it, like, you're right. There's more distractions on any type of platform that has more people on it. The downside is when you take it off of there, you miss out on the opportunity of people in your community that weren't engaging yours and seeing it because they're still there. Meaning there are people that are in our community that are scrolling, or they're, in some other thing, and then they see our stuff and they jump back into it. You don't have that opportunity generally in other ones. And so the less people in, like, school is the new hot one, but I'm not a fan yet because it's not where the people are. It's mostly the people that are selling it, right? It's mostly the people that are building the communities in there. I know it's rare, like the amount of people that we've had come through our community, the few of them that are not even on Facebook, it's rare. And then we've had a few people that join simply to be in our community, and they don't do anything else there. And then but Aaron Hunt is one of them, was never on Facebook, joined our community, begrudgingly joined Facebook to be in it. And now he's just wonderful on social media, on Facebook. Now he's using it to his full advantage with his business, where he never did before. It's like all these opportunities that are in front of us that we just kind of deny. About the downside to that is, where does it stop? Because you could say, okay, well, there's Facebook, there's LinkedIn, there's TikTok, like, it can become overwhelming. I am essentially on Facebook and LinkedIn. That's essentially, like, choose the one that you're going to go all in on, expand out from there. But I think there's downsides to all of it. It can become overwhelming if you don't have boundaries.
How do you look at what's the difference between LinkedIn and Facebook from your perspective? Or is there even a difference?
That's a good question. Obviously it's our own personal perceptions. To me, LinkedIn, I'm a fan of it. Here's what I like about it. You can connect with way more people. Meaning Facebook, you have like a 5,000 friend limit. So I'm already at that limit. So I can't friend anybody else, but people can follow me. Okay. Right? LinkedIn, you've got a 30,000 connection limit. So you can connect with a lot more people. More people can see your stuff. You can see their stuff. The downside for LinkedIn, to me, it still seems too buttoned up for me. There's algorithms that, hey, if you comment on other people's stuff, they're going to see your stuff. So you see a lot of people commenting just because they want to get their name into other conversations, but it's kind of just almost empty comments to me from what I see. Facebook to me seems like a really good blend. It feels like a really good blend of I can be professional, but I can be fun. I can be a little bit more jokey or my own personality. LinkedIn just seems a little bit more business and buttoned up, which isn't my way of doing things. I use them both, and we'll be expanding LinkedIn more in the upcoming year. But it's just, it's funny with Facebook how and this is the story I told you, and I'll say it again when it comes to community. We started our first community, 8 years ago on Facebook. And then you hear all the talk. Oh, Facebook's old. Young people don't go to Facebook, all the type of stuff. And then we went like, oh, Mighty Networks, we kept hearing is better. So we took it off of Facebook and went to Mighty Networks, a separate app. It was better. The interface was better. Everything was better except the engagement. Because people just forgot to go to a different app. And then eventually it just declined. Brought it back to Facebook. Engagement increased immediately. 2 years later, you get the same murmurs like, oh, Facebook's dying. Discord's the new thing. So we took it off. We went and built it on Discord. A friend that knew everything about it. She did it all, went to Discord. For the first 2 months, it was gangbusters. After 2 months, 10% loved it, 90% hated it or didn't go. Had to make a decision again. That's when I said, Zuckerberg, you win. I give up. He's built it. That's where everybody's at. It's 3 billion people. Even the young people, quote unquote, that don't use it, guess what happens in 5 years? They're not young anymore. And they get a little bit older and then they join Facebook. It just happens. When they're 17, everybody's like, oh, the teenagers aren't using it. Well, I can tell you from experience now that the teenagers 8 years ago that weren't using it are on there now, for the most part, as they get older. So to me, I had to give up. I had to be like, you guys won. Until somebody beats them in numbers of people there, I'm going to stay there. And I think it's the best. It's the best for our community. It is my answer.
Yeah, a takeaway from our conversation, a week and change ago around this, and even into this conversation too, is play the game that you want to play in the way that you want to play it inside that operating environment. Like, no one understand what the rules are and understand what game you're playing, then play it the way that you want to play it inside that space. And don't come in with a view of, hey, this is exactly how it has to be. And what I mean there is that preconceived notion of mine, which is, hey, this is a friends and family kind of thing. I'm only going to connect with this stuff and stuff. I'm going to go in there and do whatever. No, you know what? I can do things a bit differently, and I can test, in an operating environment that's a bit different and see what it potentially attracts. So one of the things that I'm thinking about as it relates to this is taking what we did with the Leader Lab group and making it a public group instead of a private group there to potentially attract more folks into it, while still having the private section inside the Slack community. And one of the things that Vince shared with me a couple of years ago, and we're going to talk a bit about, do you mind if we talk about the stadium?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So the next book.
So I'm going to share my view of it, like what I heard and learned from you. And then you come back and say, here's how it's evolved over time. Cause it's been a little bit of time since we've talked about it, but there's so one view might be that, hey, Facebook is the radio station that gets the game out into the hands of people. Mm-hmm. And it could be free, kind of like this podcast. The podcast is free. Anybody can go listen to it. You share it, you get it out there. Well, then now everybody who is aware that a game is happening, I mean, they're aware of Mike, or they're aware of Jen, or they're aware of the Leader Lab, they're aware of Catalyst, whatever the thing is that they're aware of. Well, then there's this group of people who come in and they're part of maybe this specific group, or they're going in to get the specific content out. So they're going into the state. And then there's going to be this area inside there where you've got different levels of seating, including the club level. And in that club level, there's going to be a bit more interaction. There's going to be a different kind of people that have access to that gate. They can go through, like ASU. So the Coyotes, I had no idea how much this was going to impact. I'm bouncing around here, but I had no idea how much it was going to hurt to see the Coyotes leave Arizona. I knew last year. Like I've seen teams leave. Like I had left Southern California before the Rams left originally and went to St. Louis and then kind of went back. But the seeing a hockey team get pulled out of the state was painful to watch.
Yeah.
But you could only seat 4,700 people in that arena for an NHL game. And inside that arena, there was still a section that was walled off where they had security guards on both sides of it. And you could only get in there. And that was where the bar was, where the lines are going to be a little bit lighter, but you pay to get access to it. So now there's this other thing, which could be a Mighty Networks, or it could be a school, or it could be a Slack, or it could be whatever. And then there's another layer of access where you've got to pass. I think Vince knows this. I used to be part of the Fiesta Bowl committee back in the day, and I used to be able to go down there. You'd be on the field, and you're bringing people out on the field, and you know where all the access points are. There's this backstage way to get in, and if you got the right credential, you can get out there and you can get some really interesting access. And the cool thing about the stadium metaphor that Vince laid out for me a couple of years ago, when we were at a mastermind, Lee Cockrell and Jody's mastermind a couple of years ago in Orlando, is this whole idea of how do you think about attracting people in? Now they become aware that there's a game. Then they become aware that there's a stadium. Then they get into the stadium and they're like, I'd like to get up into that area and get a little bit more. And then, I'm in that area. I'd like to see what else is left and then get a little bit more. And that is a really cool way to think about designing for customer experience that I had not considered until that conversation with you, even with all of the design work that I would do in software and sales and all of that other kind of stuff. So what key things did I miss in the description, and how has your thinking evolved?
Yeah, I think you laid it out really well. For those that don't know it, like, I was a sports photographer for 22 years. And on my way out and into the online world, I started to realize they've got the greatest business model and nobody talks about it. They talk about LeBron James. They talk about the numbers. They talk about, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. They talk about all that stuff, but nobody talks about the business model. And I looked around. So the last 2 years I was shooting, I had a different perspective when I would go into these stadiums. I'd be in the press box. I'd be in the owner's box, the owner's box area. I'd be in the locker room, and I'd look around and I'd go through the concourse. I'd be like, this is brilliant. This is what every solopreneur, even small business, can do. They built a stadium, and they didn't build just a team. And like you alluded to, like, they play a game on a field. It's a very niched game. Every position is niched, but they broadcast this game. And if you live, here in Tampa, I can listen to the Lightning for 30 years on the radio and never spend a dime. Never spend a dime, but I can listen to them win the Stanley Cup. I can still experience that. Man, it's for free. Now, they still make money with advertising and products. They still make money from it. They're not dumb. But what they're doing is they're building fan bases. And that's what social media is. For me, social media isn't a way to sell, for the most part, 99.9% of the time. It is a way to build attention, trust, and connections. That's it. It builds attention by posting daily. It builds trust by being who I am and being authentic. And it builds connections, because what you missed earlier when you said friends and family is the amount of people that message me with my content that I don't know who they are. And you want to go even much deeper. There were at least 50 people that went to my brother's wake that went to it because of my posts and didn't know about it and read the stories, and then old friends, old acquaintances, and they came. Like, talk about legacy in terms of if I didn't build a following with this, all those people that they would not have read those stories about him. To me, that's very important. If I had 86 friends on Facebook and I did those posts, it would have gotten nothing. Those posts actually did something, and they were shared with other people. It let him live longer, right?
Yep.
And that's just from the personal side of it, right? That's the personal side of it. The business side of it, the amount of people that know what I do and know what I stand for, know what I believe in from my posts. And they're not posts about, hey, sign up for my membership. It's what I think. It's what I believe. It's me challenging things. It's me kind of being who I am, telling stories. And then people go, I like that guy, or I don't like that guy. And guess what? The ones that like me, we do better work together. The ones that don't like me, I repel them. I'm totally fine with that. If you don't like who I am, I don't want to work with you anyway. So it eliminates a lot of friction. We don't get, in the community, we don't get a whole lot of drama. We don't get a whole lot of craziness. We have standards to come into our stadium, right? So the free content makes people aware of the game, the stadium, and then they get to choose. It's different than a funnel. which I'm not a fan of funnels, because a funnel is, let me give you a free thing and then funnel you into the $7 thing and then into the $50 thing and then into the $5. I'm going to funnel you to make more money. This is we build a stadium. You could choose to be in the cheap seats, or you can choose to be in the luxury box, or anything in between. We're going to build the levels. You choose where you're going to be at. That makes for a better customer experience. If you want to be in the listen to the free content for 5 years and never buy anything, that's totally up to you. That's like the grandpa in the garage listening to the Mets game every year, never goes to a game. But eventually the grandson's going to be like, can we go to a game? Because I've been listening to this. And they go to a game and then they go in, they go, this is amazing. I love this. But I'm sitting up in the nosebleeds and that guy down there caught a foul ball. How much are those tickets? Oh, okay. Maybe for your birthday, we'll go down there. Oh, down there, they're getting autographs from Darryl Strawberry and Gary Carter. Maybe one day, these over here in the luxury box, they're doing business deals together while watching the game. If you really got money, you can go to fantasy camp and play baseball with these guys in Florida. It's about taking one idea, optimizing it, optimizing a level, and then building levels off of it. We created a main membership level community, and now we have 5 or 6 other options around it that people can choose to be a part of. And it's all around one idea. So I can come on this show or any show and just talk about what I do, not try to sell anything, but if people like it, they check it out and they get to decide if or when they want to come into a spot. And it's to me, it's just a fun way of doing business as opposed to a desperate way of doing business.
Yeah, what I really appreciate about it and like about both the metaphor, the story, the practical application is the self-selection process. You self-select, you choose to go in one way or another. And there's a very important point that you made around kind of the magnet, that you kind of attract the right people and you repel the wrong people. And it's super important. Yeah. And when you attract the right people and repel the wrong people, you create space to eliminate drama. You highlight the importance of, look, this is no drama. Like, this is not, if you're expecting to go to an Islanders game and see the Rangers play, you're only going to see that a couple of times a year. Yeah. You're not going to, it's not, well, that guy came to the game. How come the Rangers aren't on the ice? Like, so you self-select, you get very clear about what you're looking to attract.
Yep.
If the message resonates, people will lean in a little bit further. When the message resonates, people will share it. And I think the metaphor, the analogy is a metaphor or an analogy. What's the guy? I'm not, English is not my strength.
A little bit about, more of a metaphor, but I think it's a little bit of both, but there's more to it. Also, when you think about it, we've all been in online communities. We've all been in personal communities, and the drama often, will ruin things.
Yeah.
It will ruin things. So think about it this way. We have a policy with our group, and it is a no drama policy. And it's a no jerks policy. If you go to our website, it says it, no jerks allowed, right? Like a club, because it ruins the experience for everybody else. We've had to kick people out. But when we've kicked people out, we've gotten messages from a lot of people saying thank you because they saw it too. Think about this. You go to an Islanders game, just because you bought a ticket does not mean you could just throw beer on people.
Right.
What happens when you throw beer on people? You get thrown out. You get kicked out. That's the way it works. That keeps harmony for the 19,000 other people that want to enjoy the game. But if you don't have security, you don't have boundaries, now all of a sudden it's just like a neighborhood. More of those people come in, the good people leave, the bad people come in. And now it's a slum. It's very similar with all of it. That the nicer neighborhoods have those rules in there. It's the same thing here. And that's what the stadium has, security. And that's why everything I go through with this, as I'm writing this book, it's like, it all relates. It all relates to what we're doing. And and there's nobody that's spending more money on figuring out how to market their thing than the sports industry right now. There's very few. They are on the cutting edge of new ideas. So I just study those ideas. That's my obsession. And I bring those ideas to our business and to the people that we're helping.
Well, and when you attract the right people and everybody understands what the standard is that you're operating toward, or the thing that you're moving toward, or whatever the experience is that you're creating, they start to police it for themselves too.
Yeah.
They start to lead inside the group and inside the community. And that is one of the really powerful pieces of community. And I think there's a one of the cool things about all of the technology and the shift in technology, especially when you get into high quality cameras and audio and the tools that are available, is you can create amazing virtual experiences that when you come together in person, it amplifies what happens in that in-person experience. You get past a lot of the stuff that typically will come out where you kind of go into a group and you've got an event coming up that's sold out. You bring together a group of people who feel like they know each other. You feel like they connect with each other because they've been authentic in the way that they presented themselves in the operating environment that they operate within. So do you see that this is going to be your first in-person event, but you've also had a number of people inside your community who you've met with in person?
We've done 14 or 15 live retreats.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. So
but this is the first unconference. So we're doing what's called an unconference, which is the opposite.
Yeah.
You know, it goes to what you're attracted to. I would go to these events and I love live events, but I can't stand just sitting through speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker. So I said, what if we create the opposite? What if we made an unconference, which would be no speakers, no stages, no upsells, no pitches? It would be what I always loved about these live events. I'm not sure if you did, but I would just hang out in the hallways.
Yeah.
I would spend a lot of money to hang out in the hallways because that's where I met everybody. So what if we made the hallways the event? What if we do that? Now we have like table talks and we have small breakouts and mastermind groups, but if you meet your 4 new best friends and want to have a 4-hour conversation over by the pool, that's what it's for. My job is to bring great people together. And that's the whole idea of it.
That's the reason why I thrive in smaller events and enjoy and appreciate smaller events, is because before you know it, after a couple of days, you get to know a group of people. You start walking past the same people over and over again. You see the same people. You
getting into different conversations,
and those turn into different conversations. And that's the beauty of it. It's in the margins. And I worked for O'Reilly Media before launching Catalyst, and one of the things that Tim would have every year was FOO conference, which was Friends of O'Reilly, which is basically an unconference. So it's in this whole, there's nothing new except what has been forgotten. There's a lot of movement in this whole idea of unconference, and people are promoting these things. It's not your typical conference, whatever. Yeah. If you can create space where you can get a group of people to congregate, come together, engage with each other, and create the opportunity for them to build together, it's amazing the things that can happen on the other side of it. And that's why I'm very excited about more of this movement to some of these smaller events that don't feel so overwhelming and feel like people shouting at you, rather than people getting together and actually building together.
Well, the sad thing is it's almost like the Yogi Berra line, like nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what these events become. Like all the podcast events I went to, all these entrepreneurs, they were great in the beginning. I loved them. Yeah. It was homegrown. And then all of a sudden I'd go and I'd be like, when did the corporate sponsors come into this? When did it double in size? And it all became about numbers and money, and you can't have it. And you can't have both of those at the same time. It's very difficult to do that. When your focus is growth and you now you have investors, it's like the homegrown thing that became corporate. So for us, it was like, okay, make it 100 people, and we're not going to grow the number of people. Maybe we'll do multiple events a year, but we always want to keep that feel that you just mentioned, that like, I know the people, I can talk to the people, like our whole thing was like, hey, instead of having speakers on stage, have the speakers as a part of the attendees. So you could talk with them instead of getting spoken to by them, where we have to, like, it felt like school to me. I would go to these events and now I'm sitting speaker. Like, I don't want to sit here in school taking notes. I want to talk to people. So yeah, I think it sounds like there's a movement going this way, because I hear a lot of people excited about these ideas.
There is, but it's also kind of like when you start looking at Jeeps, or you buy a Jeep, everybody else around you is driving a Jeep, right? So you just become aware of things that are around you that you might have shielded out. Vince, awesome conversation. Thanks for sharing the Rose Bowl story. Thanks for sharing the stories about your brother. Thanks for talking through some of the social stuff and sharing what you've got coming up with the conference. What else you want to share with people? Where can people find what you're working on? Do you want to talk a bit about membership freedom? What else would you like to share?
No, if anybody wants to check it out, mymembershipfreedom.com is the website. There's There's no pitch here. There's this. I just love the conversations. We help people create that. Our whole thing is freedom. That's what we strive for. That's what we homeschool our kids. I want to be with them. And what we learned was recurring revenue was the holy grail. Like, I'm not really a money guy. I'm a creative. So I struggled with that early on in terms of like, can I charge for this? And then I realized when you can blend the creativity and business, you can have everything. So we went towards the membership space because it's recurring revenue that I get to control my schedule. That's why we do this. The business side of it it's okay. It's fine. It's great. It doesn't excite me. What excites me is helping people create something that gives them that freedom so they can be with their family more, so they can travel more. So, when something comes up and they want to hop on a plane last minute, they can do it. But you can't do that when you're either just bogged down in client work or bogged down in a job. So we help people create memberships and recurring revenue for that. So if anybody wants to check that out, mymembershipfreedom.com. But yeah, I didn't come here to pitch it or promote. So I appreciate it.
All right. Only because Vince has said this multiple times, and it drives me absolutely crazy when people say things like, hey, I didn't come here to pitch. I'm not here to sell you anything. This isn't a sales thing, whatever. Vince, what's your definition of sales?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a definition of sales. I want you to help, because it's weird, because I have zero problems making an offer. Zero problems making an offer. When I know what we have could be helpful to somebody, I do. But like the way I said that right there, which might sound like I'm putting myself down or whatever. It's not. It's just like what I mentioned with social. My whole perspective with all this free content, if we're going to put it right in the stadium, is attention, connection, and trust. What I don't like is before anybody's built any trust with me, they're trying to sell me something. I have no problem buying stuff. I'm a consumer, but it's like, you've got to build. So that's why I said that, because I really just want to build connection and I want to build trust. Here's my perspective of it. It takes 3 years to build a stadium. 3 years. When the Raiders went to the NFL and said, we want a Super Bowl, we want to host a Super Bowl, and there was a big dirt lot in Vegas, the NFL didn't say, sure, you asked for a Super Bowl, here it is. They said, no, go build a stadium. And when you have a stadium built, you're going to host it. 3 years later, they built it. Now that thing makes so much money. I truly believe almost every solopreneur gets this wrong, where they're so focused on the sale before they're focused on the relationship. So my perspective is this, Mike, when it comes to sale, within 3 years, something great's going to happen. That's the way that I look at it. And it changes my perspective in terms of a pitch or an offer. It could be tomorrow that somebody goes, Vincent, I want to work with you. I need this. Or it could be a friendship that we develop over years. And then eventually I go, hey, you need this. So I don't know if I have a good definition. I'm sure you have a way better than I do, but that's the way that I view it.
So when I'm speaking in front of groups, and it depends on the talk, it depends on who the audience is, but if it's something related to like sales for non-sales professionals, or demystify sales, or helping sales for entrepreneurs, whatever the thing is, if it's sales related, typically people have an aversion to that word. So I start every one of those talks with this question: how many people like to be sold to? And you've seen this. You saw this when we were together, right? Yeah. How many people like to be sold to? And nobody raises their hand, except usually one or two people in the group. It depends on how large the audience is. If we're talking about a couple of hundred people, there's going to be 3 or 4. If it's going to be 1,000 people, there's going to be a little bit more than that. But there's going to be a percentage of people who will raise their hand and say that they like to be sold to. I pause, let that all kind of sit with the group, and then I keep that hand up again, and I say, how many people like to buy things? And the reaction is the same. And it's this, everybody smiles. People, their shoulders drop down. They laugh. And now you see this experience shift. So we don't like to be sold to, because it's something being done to us, but we do like to buy things, right? We like to buy things. So then the next question is, why do you like to buy things? And typically people will answer, and I'm kind of moving through this pretty quickly, but people will move through, and this is about creating that experience there. People will say, I like to solve problems. I want to feel good. I want to look good. I want to do whatever the thing is. The beauty about sales, when done properly, and my definition of sales is about connecting the dots between problems that are known or unknown and solutions that are known or unknown. Now, the challenge is that some problems are known, some are unknown. Get into Donald Rumsfeld, known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns. Yeah. Some solutions are known, some are unknown. If someone is not problem aware, they're not going to be going out there looking for a solution. And if what we create when we have this kind of this attention and trust piece is people who pull together, they get an experience where they start to say, hey, you know what? I actually am problem aware. I do. My head does hurt, and an aspirin might be a good thing. It's like there's an experience that happens. So what I would like to remove a lot of the negative connotations with words like sales and pitch and some of the other things as selling, because the negative connotation is that it's being done to someone, not for someone. And Anthony Iannarino says that. That's his thing. He says sales is something that you do for someone, not to someone. And he shared that on the podcast a while back. And I'll include links, including links back to the first episode that Vince joined me on, where we got into conversations about Fozzie and Vince shooting the Pope and all of that other kind of stuff. But you got to go, you got to go back and listen to it. So if you shift that perspective and think about it in the context of, hey, you know what? I'm really helping people. I'm leading people. It's an active service. Sales is an active service when done well. Sales, when done poorly, which we've all experienced and we've seen, it is not. And
I think that's what stops a lot of people.
Yeah.
When we attract good people, their greatest fears is being that guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to come across pitchy. I don't want to come across like I'm trying to sell you something. And maybe I just alluded a little bit of that when I spoke 5 minutes ago, because we all, you know how many times we've gone into it where it's like, and social was one of them. I did a post about this. Like, you ever read that story and it's really engaging and you're getting it, you're reading it on your phone. You're like, this is good stuff. And you're like, oh, where's it going to go? And then at the end of it is like, and that's why you should sign up for my webinar. And I go, you just lost me. You totally blew it.
Why did you get lost?
I got lost because, not that I got lost. They lost me.
No, why did you get lost? Why did that
trigger
an emotional response?
Because me, the way that I love to create content and the way that I love to consume content is I want exactly the things that I described that I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to trust the person. I want to connect with them. I want, they've got my attention. When this is just me, right? But when they use an emotional story to go right into a pitch, it made me think, oh, it's not about the story. It's about what you're using the story to sell me. Whereas to me, if they would have just told the story and left it alone and had me want to come back tomorrow, they'd have built a little bit more trust, a little bit more attention. And they will be the people. Seth Godin was this with me. He would just write every day in the old days, and there was never a pitch. It was just, I'm going to add value. Bought every book, went to live events. When he did offer it, I'm in. But when it's, hey, I'm using a story to sell something, and I know there's going to be a lot of disagreement, that's fine. It's just my perspective. But that story that just ends with a great story, and they go, that was good. Like, I wonder what they're going to write tomorrow. The more you can build trust, the more when you make the offer, the higher likelihood that they're going to want to accept it.
So I can share a story of personal failure from my perspective. And this is to add a little bit of context and maybe help shift perspective here slightly. That might be the one of 5 times that when they share that story, they provide the pitch.
Possibly.
Could be. They lost you on that. Yeah. So then the next thing to kind of look through is, hey, how can I go? Let's go deeper into some of the other stuff. And if every time I'm reading this person's stuff, it's always about a pitch, then that is an indicator to me that this is about building toward this thing, not about how you really want to either help or serve or share or make impact or whatever. What I have gotten feedback on a number of different times, specifically around my content and the stuff that I share and all of that other kind of stuff, is number one, my packaging sucks. So first off, when people go in, they don't know if they're going to watch the Islander game, Ranger game, or the Jets, or heck, the
When
Mets.
You say packaging, what do you mean? You mean like your website? What do you mean?
I'm still working on all of it. So my interpretation is, when you go you pick up the transformer in the store, and it's got the Hasbro markings on it, and on the back it talks about all the strengths and weaknesses, and like you know what you're picking up.
You know what you're getting.
My stuff, you don't know what you're picking up. It could be all kinds of stuff. So there's some website stuff. There's some branding stuff. There's some I mean, we've talked about a number of different things, and ultimately the story arc of our conversation is experience, loss, remembering, tributing, getting out of your own head and getting a message out there, pulling things together, and then saying, how can you create an experience to draw a movement? Like that's the arc of this conversation.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people will get that. Some people will go through and be like, fuck, how do you go from,
how did it go all over?
Yeah. We were all over the place. No, there was an arc. Like we moved through emotion with a level of intention.
Yeah.
So I've heard packaging challenges. I've also heard that my calls to action at the end are not very clear. Like I don't have calls to action, or I'm really soft on the calls to action. So I think there's kind of an interesting thing that people are going through in this whole movement of where do they start to feel comfortable making the ask? Because if you don't ask, you don't get. And one of the things that you highlighted at the conference that we were at, the thing is the whole, hey, I know a guy. You know a guy. You know a guy everywhere. It could be, hey, you've sent me pictures of Billy Smith. You've sent me some really cool pictures of things. I know when I go into a store and I see wallpaper of ants and bugs, I think of your son. So there's an experience that we create, and there's this connection thing. Yeah. There's a connection, right? So it gets into your book, The Wealth of Connection, right? Go ahead.
That's what I think is lacking in most people's calls to action.
What do you mean?
It's so much about a one-to-many call to action as opposed to a true connection.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I can tell you this. Say you're having an event, right? And we've kept in touch or even a little bit here. And you post on Facebook and your blog and your email and your podcast about this event, right? You post them all there. Those are all calls to action.
Yeah.
And you send me a personal message. You go, hey, Vince, I think you'd be great at this event. This is what we're doing. I can tell you right now, the percentages of me going to that event are going to be dramatically higher, from that personal message than any of the other things that you did. And I think that's what we're seeing over and over. We had somebody join our membership because they saw what we were doing. They saw what we did for other people. They had an email list of 46,000 people. They launched a membership before they joined us, and they got 12 people to sign up. And they have good messaging. People, this is where I think it is in 2025. It's different than it was in 2015. There were calls to action and lead magnets that actually converted then, and you can get them on. It is such a different world. And I think a lot of people in these last 3 years have struggled with something that used to work that doesn't work anymore. And they're like, why isn't this converting? The call to action? And it's not that it stinks. It's not that the call to action is bad. It's just everybody is constantly getting called to action that nobody's taking action. But if you were to, that person calls me on the phone, like, this is a cool thing, I think you give it a shot. And there's a relationship there, and there's trust and attention and connection. That's all we do. I don't do my podcast anymore, Mike. I don't do my newsletter anymore. I just connect with people. And that's why it all works. It's so hard to convince people because they go, oh, what's the ROI on that? Until they see it. John Sanders messaged me last night. He goes, I've been doing what you've been talking about the last 2 weeks. He goes, I can't believe what's happening. And all these things he was doing were struggling. So I don't know if the call to action stinks as much as it is. There's been such an overwhelm of calls to action that people just don't, for the most part, unless you have a huge following and big budget and all that type of stuff. I'm seeing it, Mike, time and time again with people that are just really frustrated and stuck.
Yeah. So what it's got me thinking about is how clear am I on the individual one-to-one connection based on what I'm seeing and hearing, and being able to say, hey, you know what? You were talking about this. You might find this thing interesting, or whatever that piece is. So Vince, awesome conversation.
That could be a whole nother conversation because that's the core of everything. The amount of times I've sent a message or a photograph, or I'm always thinking about, hey, I flew over Texas on a flight one time and there was a lake that was shaped like Texas, inside of Texas from the airplane. I saw it, shot a picture, sent it to like 7 of my buddies that live in Texas. Hey, did you know this was here? But One of them messaged me back, and within 3 minutes, it's like, I need to hire you for what I'm doing. I'm like, that's a really weird thing. I didn't do a pitch. I connected personally. It doesn't take that long to do. The amount of people like, oh, I don't have time. The amount of people, Mike, that I'm like, hey, we should chat. Like, you know what? In the spring, let's get together and get on a phone call. Like, that's what's wrong right there. They're so scheduled with all this other stuff that doesn't matter that they don't just drop what they're doing to get on a phone call. And that phone call is where the magic happens. Whether you're going to offer something, whether they're going to offer something, whether you're just going to develop a stronger relationship, whether you're going to refer something out, the art of personal connection is so poor right now. And I think it's what actually matters. So, that we get started on that conversation. We'll go another couple hours.
We'll do it again. What we'll do is after your event's in February, right? After your event, let's have a follow-up conversation. We'll do another podcast episode. And in that podcast episode, and you're hearing this now. So sometime in March, you're going to get this thing will get recorded. We will do a recap on lessons learned on the event, and we will talk about and go deep on connection. Good?
Yeah. To that point, my dream with this event was not just to sell it out, but was to sell it out without any promotion. Sell it out simply with conversations.
Cool.
And that was why I was so proud of it. It was just through conversations. Go scroll through my social media. There was one post back in February. This is the event we're going to do. And because I think everybody thinks they need the funnel. They need the email list. And I'm not saying they're bad things, but I think they're completely overused to where they think that's how they're going to get people to pay attention. And it was honestly just conversations.
I think this is a reminder I've got up on my monitor. The road to 5 starts with 1. And too many people, when they're starting a business, will kind of fall into one of the traps that Vince is talking about, which is the idea of, hey, I just need to do more. I need to get more. I need to get this volume out there. And I got to scale, right? So the reality, though, is one at a time. The Isles won 4 cups in a row by winning the first cup. They didn't win the 4th cup first, right? So you win the first cup. You win the first conversation. You win that first relationship. You win one at a time. And you don't need to make it so big. And ultimately, like, I mean, this is another one of those things where I've shared this in a couple of different places, but we can go pretty deep on this kind of conversation. I'm frustrated that the only way to see a number of the companies I've worked with is you had to pick up this phone and you had to look at the app and you had to go to their website or use their whatever. So I've made a concerted effort to get more involved in construction, manufacturing, heavy equipment type stuff. It's still wetware. It's still humans working with humans.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you can see this stuff when you drive down the road. You see it in your community. You see the auto dealership that's built or the service center that's built or the whatever that's built. So just go back through that reminder. If you're trying to make it big, like even me, as I go out and start to do more on Facebook, the road to 5 starts with 1. Make it small and get things going. Vince, I appreciate your friendship. Awesome conversation. Thanks for going a bit longer. We'll get links in the show notes. Anything else to close on from your perspective?
Excited for the next one, and let's keep going. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. If you know somebody who would enjoy this conversation, please share it with them. Get the message out there. The shares help us help people who are looking to overcome some of the obstacles that they might have, whether it's in building community or getting past some preconceived notions around things like generating revenue or leadership. The shares help. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking different about your process?